What's good, everybody? It's the Cloud with Cap Show, UFC 309. I cannot wait. We're just a couple weeks out. We're going to see the greatest UFC fighter of all time, Jon Jones. Yes, Jon Jones, the greatest fighter we've ever seen. He's been untouchable. Yes, he's been in some close fights in his whole career, but we're talking about a guy that defended his title 13 times. Not 4, not 5, 13 times. So Jon Jones is clearly the number one fighter we've ever seen in the UFC. Dana White said it many times. I know Dana White would love to suck Jon Jones off. He loves him so much, but Jon Jones literally is that guy. He beat world champion after world champion. The resume speaks for itself. His most recent win was last year against Cyril Gane, and he made it look easy. Literally, it took him 2 minutes to submit him. It looks like he's competing against junior varsity guys, and Jon Jones is professional. It's like you guys are still in high school, dude. Like, you guys are not even close to my level. And it's crazy the disrespect Jon Jones gets. People say, oh, he's on PEDs or he's on steroids. Look at him, always getting arrested, blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, Jon Jones is still the GOAT. Whether he's doing coke or not, it does not matter. Jon Jones is still going to find a way to win inside that octagon. That's what it is. So, like, we could say all this stuff about Jon Jones outside of the octagon. I get all that. That's fine. You could say what you want. But we're talking about pound for pound, the greatest guys of all time in UFC mixed martial arts history. Jon Jones is that guy. He's the number one guy. We never seen some of the things that Jon Jones does. The oblique kicks, the elbows. The elbows are crazy. Boney Jones, man, I'm telling you, we're going to see the old school type of Jon Jones when he fights Stipe. I'm telling you right now, we're going to see the elbows. We're going to see the takedowns that he's going to control Stipe. And Stipe is arguably the greatest heavyweight in UFC history, right? He beat Daniel Cormier twice. So did Jon Jones. He lost to Cormier once. He did beat Francis Ngannou the first time they fought him. And then he got knocked out by Francis Ngannou the second time they fought him. So Stipe has a great resume as well. Beating Francis Ngannou's first time. I mean, that's pretty great as well. And people say Francis Ngannou's this, great UFC fighter as well, even though he's not in UFC anymore. But at the same time, I'm looking at Jon Jones and realizing these guys aren't on his level. So when Jon Jones handles business, he's going to beat Stipe, probably by submission, if I had to guess. By submission, I think he's going to take Stipe down, he control him, and then eventually submit him. And I do think Jon Jones is going to call for one more fight of his life. And it's not going to be what everybody thinks it's going to be in Tom Aspinall. No, I think he's going to fight. Yes, I know it sounds pretty crazy. I think he's going to fight Alex Pereira. I think it's going to be one of the biggest fights, if not the biggest fight in UFC history. It's going to be bigger than Conor McGregor and Khabib. That's how big it's going to be. Because we're talking about Alex Pereira, who's the hottest UFC fighter right now, probably the pound-for-pound number one fighter in the UFC rankings. So, if Jon Jones and Alex Pereira end up going, next year sometime, I think that's the fight to make. If we're talking numbers, if we're talking business for Dana White, this makes sense to me. Go Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira. I think that it's a mismatch for Alex Pereira. We're talking about Jon Jones who does it all, who can stand and bang with the best, who can also take you down and submit you. He's a great wrestler. So I just think Jon Jones, that's an easy fight for him. I think he's going to take it. And if we're talking legacy terms, Jon Jones is near the end. We know that. I think Jon Jones has a couple more fights left. I think it's this fight, maybe one more fight left. Whether that's Alex Pereira or Tom Aspinall, whichever or. I just think Tom Aspinall, yes, he's a great UFC fighter. He's a great heavyweight interim champion right now. But come on, be honest. You guys really think he's going to beat Jon Jones? You guys think Tom Aspinall has a great chance to beat Jon Jones? Jon Jones here. Okay, we're Jon Jones. Like, you guys really think that? That's pretty crazy to me to think that Tom Aspinall is just going to walk right through Jon Jones and knock him out. You guys are crazy to think that. You guys are must have started watching UFC recently because Jon Jones isn't like that. Jon Jones understands distance. He understands his opponent's weaknesses and strengths. He understands what he's going to do to your opponent. Like, Jon Jones is just above these guys, man. Like, Jon Jones will beat Aspinall and Alex Pereira next year. If he wanted to do that as well, if he wanted to fight 2 more times before he hangs it up and says, hey, I'm the GOAT, even though he is the GOAT already, I just think in a couple weeks when he fights Stipe in New York, I think it's going to be a clinic. I really do. Stipe hasn't fought in 2 or 3 years at least. Like, it's been a long time Stipe's fought. So Stipe's been living a normal life for like 2 to 3 years now. You know, John Jones literally fought last year against Cyril Gane. Made it look easy. It made it look so easy where people are like, oh my gosh, dude, we're completely wrong about John Jones. John Jones is clearly the #1 fighter we've ever seen in the UFC history, dude. Out of all the great fighters, all the great champions you can name in the UFC, name them all. Chuck Liddell, Rampage, all these guys, John Jones is still the #1. He's the GOAT, dude. 27-1. The only one was an illegal elbow, and he was dominating him. This was earlier in John Jones' career when that happened, the illegal elbow. But at the end of the day, man, John Jones is he's going to run right through Stipe. I think he could win in the first round. If not, he's going to toy with them for a couple rounds here and there, make it look easy. But I think John Jones is going to run right through Stipe, and then he's either going to call out Alex Pereira or Tom Aspinall for one more fight for John Jones' UFC career. And I don't know what Dana White's going to do, but I think if Dana White, the smart businessman that he is, fight Alex Pereira versus John Jones, that's going to put up better numbers than Tom Aspinall versus John Jones. Why do I say that? Because Alex Pereira has been saving the UFC for the last year in these big-time fights. You know, UFC 300. You know, the list goes on. Like, Alex Pereira's been stepping up to the plate, man. Defended his title 3 times this year. So, like, Alex Pereira, man, if anyone deserves a fight versus John Jones, it's Alex Pereira, in my opinion. Yes, I get it. Tom Aspinall could be next in that fight, get the winner. You know, however they're going to do it. But I think John Jones is going to handle business. He's going to beat Stipe probably by submission or knockout from a leg kick, like similar to what he did to Daniel Cormier. Just kind of toying with Cormier. Everybody says Cormier's a great wrestler. Well, John Jones took him down a couple times. Like, and we're talking about Daniel Cormier, who's an Olympian wrestler. Not just a regular wrestler, Olympian wrestler, that John Jones made him look average. So, like, you know, there's levels to this. So, I love John Jones. I like him over Stipe all day, every day in this matchup. And then John Jones is going to fight 1 or 2 more times before he retires in the UFC as the greatest UFC fighter of all time. Take off, John Jones. Let's go! And then we got Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler. This is a rematch from 2021. Yes, we remember this fight 3 years ago where this fight was really close. And I would say Michael Chandler had a great first round versus Charles Oliveira. Really, arguably could have finished Charles Oliveira. He was this close. Second round comes out. Charles Oliveira knocks out Michael Chandler. I mean, 1 mistake, 2 mistakes, all it takes. And that's it. Lights out just like that. But I'm looking at Charles Oliveira, man. A little bit more experience than Michael Chandler. Been in the UFC longer than Michael Chandler. He's 34-10. Even though his most recent fight, I thought Charles Oliveira won. I think that was UFC 300 it was. He won round 1 and 3 to me. The judges gave it to the other dude, which is fine. It is what it is. But we're talking about Michael Chandler here, who was supposed to fight Conor McGregor, hasn't fought in about 2.5 years. So, like, and his last fight was against Poirier, which he should have won that fight as well. He ended up losing. I think he got choked out in the 3rd round of Poirier. Like, that's a fight he should have won. He was beating Poirier. I think he won round 1. If not, that was like a tie round 1. Round 2, clearly Michael Chandler won against Poirier, 8-10. And then round 3, Poirier handled business, choked him out. But I'm looking at Michael Chandler and saying, hey, you've had 2.5 years off. Like, your condition should be top tier. You should be ready for Charles Oliveira. You know what he is. You know what he throws out. You know he likes to do submission. So if you're Michael Chandler here in his camp, you're saying, hey, bro, like, we're going to have to switch it up here. We cannot fight Charles Oliveira the same way we did in 2021. Back in May of 2021, you cannot fight him the same. You're going to have to switch it up. Throw more leg kicks, Michael. Maybe even shoot for a takedown and do the old school just ground and pound. Even though Charles Oliveira is great on the ground, I would think that his coaches for Michael Chandler are telling him, hey, we're going to keep this fight standing. We don't want this to go to the ground whatsoever, even though Michael Chandler's a good wrestler. So I don't really know what they're going to tell Michael Chandler, but I want to see a different Michael Chandler this fight. I do. I want to see a new Michael Chandler, a more precise Michael Chandler, a guy that's going to throw strikes that actually going to connect and hit with his target, Michael Chandler. That's what I want to see. Because I've seen the old Michael Chandler where he's kind of like a brawler out there, just throwing crazy overhand rights, throwing crazy stuff. We know Michael Chandler's explosive. We know he's super athletic. But, you know, there's got to be some type of technique in Michael Chandler's throwing abilities. He has all the athletic gifts from God, absolutely. But the precision, the timing, just the accuracy of his strikes have to improve if he wants to beat Charles Oliveira. Because if not, if it's the same stuff, if it's the same Michael Chandler that we're used to seeing in the Brawler, Charles Oliveira is going to win this matchup. Okay, so right now I'm leaning more towards Charles Oliveira, the more active fighter, the fighter that's been fighting more often. Chandler hasn't fought in 2.5 years. So I just think they know each other. There's a lot of respect between each other. But if it's the same Michael Chandler, give me Charles Oliveira. But if Michael Chandler's going to come out, a new Michael Chandler, better accuracy with the strikes, more leg kicks, just utilizing his distance, I do think Michael Chandler can win this fight. We saw in the first fight when they fought, he had him hurt. He could have knocked Charles Oliveira out. So I think he just needs to handle a little bit differently. But I can't wait for this matchup, man. I think this might be fight of the night on this card. It's the Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira fight. I really do. At UFC 209, I think this is the best fight, pound for pound, statistically matched up. I think this is the best fight to make, man. I mean, Dana White and company, they are super smart. They know what they're doing. And I love Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler in this matchup. I cannot wait for this fight. Let's go! And then we got the future, Bo Nickal versus Paul Craig. Bo Nickal 6-0. Paul Craig coming off 2 losses in a row. Give me Bo Nickal, man. Bo Nickal is the future. I'm telling you guys right now, I'm hopping on the hype train. A lot of people think he's hype. They saw UFC 300 against Brimage, and they were like, oh, he was struggling against Brimage. But yet, he still submitted him in the second round. And literally, they bring up these clips about Bo Nickal. Oh, we got controlled literally 10 seconds of this fight. Literally, Brimage had a good 10, 15 seconds. That's it. Like, of this whole fight, he got completely dominated. So I'm looking at Bo Nickal. They're going to say what they want about Bo Nickal. I'm telling you right now, he is the American Khabib. He is. He is the blueprint to beat Chimaev. So I can't wait, man. The UFC is building that fight up. It's going to be Chimaev versus Bo Nickal in a couple years, and arguably the biggest fight in UFC history. You know, unless John Jones and Alex Pereira happen. But I'm telling you right now, Bo Nickal is the blueprint for that. Bo Nickal has arguably the best wrestling in the UFC. So, like, we're talking about a guy that is continuing to prove is relatively new to UFC. I mean, what, he got an MMA, back in 2021? Now, all of a sudden, he's fighting on made cards now. I'm telling you, Bo Nickal's the real deal. I do think he can get better with footwork and his standing game. We all know that. He's an elite wrestler. We know that. But at the end of the day, Bo Nickal's got to improve. We don't know. Bo Nickal hasn't been tested. So we don't know if Bo Nickal has a good chin or he doesn't have a good chin. We don't know. So Bo Nickal, this could be an opportunity here to see, is Bo Nickal really the real deal, dealing with this chin, dealing with being tested. Okay, we know Bo Nickal's elite. We know he's a top-tier guy. He's a guy that can compete against, guys like Chimaev. And that's the fight to make, man. I'm telling you, Chimaev versus Bo Nickal is going to happen in the future. I cannot wait. But Bo Nickal, his chin, we don't know. We don't know if he's got a glass chin or not. We just don't, because we haven't really seen him get hit in the UFC since he's made his debut. He's 6-0. So, like, let's give him some break, man. Like, I'm telling you right now, Bo Nickal, what I've seen from him right now since 2021, I'm telling you, he is the real deal. Bo Nickal is elite. He's going to get in the top 10 eventually, and eventually he's going to start fighting these top 5 guys, which they need him. You know, I want him to go against Robert Whittaker. I want him to go against, guys like Izzy Adesanya or guys like Chimaev. Everybody wants to see that fight, right? Everybody understands that Chimaev versus Bo Nickal is an amazing matchup. 2 elite wrestlers, 2 guys that are great fighters that I want to see. But right now, I obviously lean more towards Chimaev, but I do think Bo Nickal is catching him. I do think Bo Nickal's improving each and every fight. So, and Bo Nickal's a smart guy. He's got a smart team around him. He's very disciplined, doesn't drink, man. I'm telling you, Bo Nickal's a top-tier guy. Lives like Khabib, man. Lives similar to Chimaev, man. I'm telling you, just eat, sleep, MMA. That's what he does. So I think Bo Nickal is the real deal. I think he's going to beat Paul Craig in the first round. I really do. Paul Craig, he's somewhat a veteran, 17-8-1 in the UFC, 2 losses in a row. He's a good fighter, but I think Bo Nickal, he's going to run right through Paul Craig. I love Bo Nickal by submission or knockout, which knockout is probably plus huge money, plus 700-800. But I love Bo Nickal by submission. I think that's the most common bet to make with Bo Nickal is by submission. So I think we're going to see a different side of Bo Nickal. Who knows? Maybe Bo Nickal might come out and say, hey, people are doubting my stand-up game. I'm going to stand and bang with Paul Craig. But eventually I do think he's going to shoot for takedowns because Bo Nickal's just an elite wrestler. He really is. So take off Bo. I love Bo to win by submission in the first round versus Paul Craig. And then Bo Nickal's going to continue to elevate and then eventually fight Chimaev, what we all want to see. Take off Bo Nickal. Let's go! And then we got Chris Weidman. Yes, Chris Weidman, been in the UFC, I think, since 2011, dude. He's a vet, man. He fought Anderson Silva twice in 2023, or excuse me, in 2013. Not 2023. In 2013, he fought Anderson Silva twice, beat him twice. And we remember the sick injury that Anderson Silva had. And then Anderson Silva getting overconfident and get knocked out by Chris Weidman. But that's definitely, by far, Chris Weidman's best wins of his career is against Anderson Silva by a long shot. We're talking Anderson Silva's arguably one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. He's in the top 5, no debate whatsoever. Shout out to Anderson Silva. What man, I mean, just a legend. But Chris Weidman, 16-7. Fighting Anders, who's 18-8 and won no contest. I think it's going to be a close fight. But, man, let me get Chris Weidman here. He's been in the UFC for a while. He's a veteran. He understands what's at stake, man. And you know, he had a nasty leg injury himself. So I think Chris Weidman, man, the experience is going to play a huge factor. It really is. So give me Chris Weidman in this matchup. And let me go back to Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler. And when I talk about experience, I'm talking about Charles Oliveira, who's had way more experience than Michael Chandler. So right now, I'm leaning more towards Charles Oliveira in this fight. I just am, man. It makes more sense to me. Unless Michael Chandler's accuracy's improved over the past 2.5 years, I don't know. It's just Michael Chandler's been waiting on this money fight against McGregor for too long. He should have been fighting, last year. So it's going to be interesting to see how this fight develops, to see what side of Michael Chandler comes out here. And we know Charles Oliveira's going to throw leg kicks. We know he's going to mix it up. And we might even see Charles Oliveira might try to shoot for takedowns. You just never know, man. I'm leaning more towards Charles Oliveira versus Michael Chandler, but that's the best fight on this card by a long shot. Michael Chandler, Charles Oliveira, and then obviously the main event, the greatest fighter of all time, Jon Jones versus Stipe. Man, Stipe's a legend, arguably the greatest heavyweight fighter of all time. Well, he's going to look average when Jon Jones matches up with him. I'm telling you right now, Jon Jones is going to win by submission. Jon Jones is the greatest UFC fighter to ever live. 13 title defenses. He's the GOAT. Jon Jones, the freaking GOAT. It's the Clown with Cap show. It's UFC 309. Let's go!